So we're going to look at, I suppose, grouping a lot of different responders. I suppose this presentation has come from a bit of work I'm doing with the Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council, the Irish Heart Foundation, National Ambulance Service and HSE. And it was to look at where we could utilise or basically get the defibs to our patients and look at all the different types of groups that are out there. And it very much bases on a lot of what we've heard today. What I did was I looked with a certain criteria, the types of calls, the area coverage, and each group I'm going to talk about, I'm going to look at those headings. The slides are going to be there, but I'm not going to speak about each particular one for each group, as I'm conscious of this 8 minutes. Someone might give me a 10-second notice after each slide. If we were to look at the likes of the retained fire service and look at some of the benefits of that, they're in highly populated areas away from hospitals, away from ambulance stations by and large. There's very little ongoing management needed, very often highly trained, get lots of ongoing training themselves within their organisations. A small bit of cooperation and linking in with the ambulance service keeps us all on the same hymn sheet. But by and large, as a resource for the National Ambulance Service, there's very little day-to-day management, which is a huge plus. Some of the disadvantages may be, or the limitations may be, that they really can only go to cardiac arrests. So where areas where we may need chest pains and strokes, they're not as available, I suppose. And the other issue would be a cost. Sending out 6 and 7 guys in a fire tender is quite expensive. But as Jonah mentioned earlier, there are lots of ways around that, and if we take the bigger picture and look into it, there are ways of having 2-tiered responses even within the service like that. Jonah mentioned a lot about the Gardaí and a lot of his work in that area, and through the Google Vine, it's something that's been popping up an awful lot recently, particularly in America, and I've seen a recent one there in the UK. And these are just some bits that I've picked, and you can see they go back as far as 2002 and right up to the last couple of weeks. The ERC, European Resuscitation Council, in one of their papers reckoned that it was a recommendation that they had in 2004 to see more linked. If we go back to our own strategic report on sudden cardiac death, it was an area to be looked at as well. And while the trial or pilot that they had a couple of years ago in Kilkenny and Finglas couldn't be said to be particularly successful, there are lots of areas, it's changed immensely since then, and the biggest problem then at that stage seemed to be activation. So with our new National Control Centre and a lot of what we do, and there's going to be a slow movement, and I think it's basically the countdown is on the moment, the 3, 2, 1, because as soon as that National Control Centre opens up, it should be all go within at that stage. What are the benefits? I would probably see them most likely going to cardiac arrest only, which may be an issue, but the massive benefits is the urban-rural divide, as Jonah mentioned earlier. The number of stations, the placements, they may not always be available, and none of us may always be available, but there's great coverage out there if we can link them up. We don't know what the reliability will be in regards to them being available, but by and large they will have to make decisions as to which calls they go on from time to time. But their availability, because of the type of scheme that they would be a 24-hour pretty much. And I know, like every other organisation in the country at the moment, cost is a factor and the likes of that. But there are huge benefits in all of these groups as we'll be going through. The National Off-Duty staff system within the National Ambulance Service, again, I was very much involved in this, setting this up myself in the Midlands here. There's little or no setup needed or work needed in it. There's little or no governance needed. There's no ongoing serious administration needed. However, it is a very low level of reliability. They're never guaranteed these people are going to be at home or in an area. So, everything has its limitations as well. Saying that, one of the biggest advantages of the off-duty paramedic scheme, or I say off-duty paramedic, but off-duty National Ambulance Service scheme, would be the linking. If you have people who are involved and linked back through these schemes, it makes the jobs of the National Ambulance Service officers much, much easier, because a lot of the questions, the setup, the what-ifs, the buts are answered and dealt with within their ordinary meetings. And also the fact that they can link back to an officer, I suppose, on a more unofficial basis makes things move along a little bit quicker. I suppose this is the big one for a lot of people in the room today. Again, the number of calls they can attend is huge. The level of reliability depends on the schemes, but by and large, if we take the kind of schemes you're talking about here, the Wicklow type of schemes, they're very much integrated, linked schemes. The reliability, the rostered schemes are very, very reliable. There's huge benefits in it. However, there is significant management needed, either within the ambulance service or within the schemes themselves. And I know from the bit of work I do, which is small in comparison, it's time consuming on somebody somewhere. But we know the results. The results are excellent and hugely beneficial. And while they don't always make the papers, they don't always make the statistics, if you live in your own community, hopefully you get some of that praise at the end of the day. The linked pad scheme, and again, I suppose some of these maybe makey-uppy names to you guys, but it's just trying to put some things in certain boxes to be able to evaluate them and to look at them. This is where a village gets a defibrillator and sticks it in the middle of the village, maybe does some mass training and may elect a handful of people to be on the text alert system. But unlike your CF4 scheme, doesn't carry the defibrillator with them. So has to go get the text, go and pick up the defibrillator and return. I suppose I should have said in the CF4 that the area of coverage was somewhere, the Wicklow guys are working on 5 kilometres, but taking that we want to be there within 5 minutes based on EU recommendations, taking an 8 kilometre radius. The public access scheme is right down to about a 2 kilometres. In other words, if you were to get a call, it would take you roughly 2 or 3 minutes to get to the defibrillator and to get back. It is probably only cardiac arrest at that stage, even though there are options there. It has a very poor reliability, but rather than saying it's useless and it's no good, it has potential. And would normally cover as a smaller populated area with low levels of calls. There is significant administration from the ambulance service point of view, but again, everyone has a place in this framework. The non-linked pad schemes then, where again a village puts up a defibrillator in the middle of their village, their local church, their shop, their GAA hall or centre. We know defibrillators don't save lives. It's defibrillators, people with defibrillators that save lives. So that's where we need to link these two things up. These groups are not alerted, they're not registered as responders, but hopefully, and again looking at things like the bill that Senator Quinn is looking at, if we have enough of them, people will start to take cognizance of them. If they're in the right populated areas, if we know where they should be and where they are, we may be able to utilise them more. If the National Ambulance Service know where they are, and actually only as early as last evening, there was a video being shown of a case in America. Oh geez, time's up already. Okay, we'll skip that one. We'll chat to you later on about that. General practitioners, again, many calls that they can respond to and to go to. And the divide is big, and it depends on their kind of their how big their surgeries are, as whether they're free to go, and the reliability. Again, we see an awful lot of good work, particularly in the west, and the more rural, the more important the GP is. In his essence, as he's known to his own community, is most likely to be available. Work-based schemes, again, high reliability and high success rate, in as much as that they're in that area, but the call volume is very small. But they too can be linked under the National Ambulance Service policy. So if a company wants to put in a scheme, they can actually link it, because again, if someone was to collapse in a certain area of a big building or a big business, they are more likely to ring 999. So they may actually be advised that way as opposed to within the company itself. Voluntary organisations running community schemes, I think we've a huge place to tap into here at this stage. Huge backup already there. We need to be linking in. They have huge systems for training. They have huge backup for after calls and the likes of that. And we haven't tapped into this quite right. The advantage for them has to be is that by and large, initially they might be members, but over time these guys will probably move on and hopefully become members at that stage. And then the voluntary organisations on duty, again highly qualified in big populated areas, at festivals, at events. The big disadvantage we have there is that because we can't move them within the control centre very easily, it's very difficult to be able to alert them of calls. And again, by the time they get alerted within the group, so if we're at a football match, again someone's more likely to ring 999 than to go looking for a first aid post. So we need to be able to link them in further. This is what we should be looking towards. This is an old slide, so it should be well enhanced now at this stage. But there's no reason why we can't be all working together. We can't be overlapping. And hopefully this framework is where we'll be looking at, that no one thinks that they're out there on their own. And it doesn't matter if we get 10 different types of responders or just 10 responders or 2 responders. Every bit is better than no one there at all. So again, I'd like to applaud all your hard work and all the work of all the groups. I genuinely know what each one of you have done because I've done a small bit myself, so I can see the amount of work, I know the amount of work is involved. Cormac.